I think we can start. Okay. So, hello everyone. We are two people, as you can see. I'm Mateusz, and this is Łukasz. And
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, Łukasz. And you can know us from Sylius core team because we have been working with Sylius for years already. And you can also know that we are the co-founders of Commerce Weavers company, which we started at the beginning of the year. Yeah, and we should wait 1 more minute because people are arriving. You are too hasty. Yeah, okay. So the weather today is really beautiful. Obviously it isn't. I hope that you had a good flight to Poznań because I know that a lot of the people had some problems because of the hurricane and all of this stuff. And I think that we can start. Again, hello. We will be talking tomorrow. Today we will be talking about typical pitfalls of Sylius development.
Over the years, we have seen several projects, and we spent plenty of time working inside of the Sylius, so we were sure that we know what are the typical problems that all of you face, and that's what this presentation is all about. So what is our take about typical pitfalls of Sylius development? And our main message to you is, thank you very much. That's all from today's presentation. There are no problems at all.
Pitfalls of Sylius development. You can go. Okay, so really, there are some. It's really funny. I came up about that like 1 minute before the presentation. I'm so comic guy. Why do we do this? As Łukasz said, we have been part of Sylius for years, and when we finally started to work on the projects that are built on top of the Sylius at the beginning of this year, we realized that there is a really the perspective is totally different. The different perspective of creating the product and actually using it. So we see it from totally different angles, and we would like to share our perspective a little bit about it. Obviously, the first thing that we did at the beginning when we started to create the presentation, we asked ChatGPT what are the typical pitfalls of Sylius development, because this is what you actually do in 2023 when you would like to create some presentation. Yeah, and actually, ChatGPT knows something about Sylius, knows something about potential pitfalls, what can go wrong. But what took our site on this list was the point 6 called upgrades. And maybe you can see that there is something that there can be some problems with upgrading between major versions of Sylius. You know.
That's the commonly known problem, that Sylius had so many major versions that it probably failed all of your projects.
Yeah, obviously after that we decided that we will not base our presentation on ChatGPT because probably we have a little more knowledge than it in Sylius, and also we have a conclusion that AI is not a threat, at least for now. We can sleep safe, maybe in the future. Yeah, but what we actually started to do before the presentation, we tried to get some feedback from our community on Twitter, on X, stupid name, on some social media, and to gather some information from the people that are actually using Sylius for much longer than we are using it. And there are plenty of topics that we would like to address, but obviously we will not be able to do that. Yeah, so we will touch some of the most important ones that we think that are most important, but we would also like to ask you for something, because for us this is not the first presentation that we do in our lives. We have already done plenty of that, but we have never done the presentation together with Łukasz. So this is an experiment for us. We will see how it goes, and we would like to make an experiment inside the experiment. Thank you. We would like to make an experiment inside the experiment and ask you to scan this QR code and show us your typical pitfalls of Sylius development. And if we will have some time at the end of the presentation, we will address these concerns that you have. If we will not have time at the end of the presentation, we have the content for the next presentation. So win-win.
And now that brings us to the first topic that was quite common on the social media, that we ask for the problems, and one of the main concerns was performance. The performance I wanted to address from three perspectives. It will be N+1 problems, concurrency from different users and concurrency from the single user. The first point that I would like to address is the n+1. And just probably, who of you is aware of that problem? That makes it worth it for me to mention that. But to do so, I will use some cases based on the mostly headless approach, but you need to remember that in full stack mode it is also available. So the presentation, even though for sake of the simplicity I will be doing on API based, it's the same problems appears also for the full stack mode. They're a little bit less important because you have a control over the data that are using that. But with the headless mode, because of the serialization process, the n+1 problem hits you even more, because usually you are serializing the whole content of the main response and the relation that are there, and then you are hit it more and more and more, depending on the amount of data that you have it. For the sake of this presentation, I've created the simple entity, which is product, and I will be presenting product list. So in this case, let's assume that we have a product with a name and the price. This is type of the content that is returned. And if I have 6 products with a node association, how many queries will I do to the database? Please? 1. Great. Actually, there will be a 2 because there's a count for the query collection, but the main idea is that there will be only one main query, which makes it with the O1, which means that we'll always have the same amount of queries. So we have a constant amount of queries. Doesn't matter how many products we would like to present. If we have an order list, which will contain order, which contains order items, and then there will be a product, it starts to be a little bit more complicated. So let's say that we want to have an order list with amount of orders free, and each of the free orders is associated with 2 items. How many queries do you think we'll have? 9? 4? The answer is 5. The main idea is that we, of course, have a count. We have a main query for orders, but also we have 3 additional orders to load order items for each of the orders. So as we had 3 items, that gives us 5, which means that at this stage, because of this part, we reach the linear algorithmic complexity of queries that you are doing to the database. Every item that will be there in the order will increase amount of queries that you are doing in to your database. But then let's add something more, and to our order list I will finally also serialize the product, which you can see also here. So we'll sort it lower, because I added total function as a function of the product price and the quantity of the item. So in this case, you don't even see the product here. There is no product in the response. The problem is hidden, yet I'm just calculating the price. And actually, from the order perspective, I'm assuming that all the prices and the price of the order item is the quantity time product price. I still have the same structure as previously. 3 orders, every of the order has 2 items. How many queries do I have now? Anyone? It can be a rough estimate. 11? Exactly 11 queries. So, but my point is that even though I didn't present too much data, at this stage I didn't even present products, but I just read some data from the product itself that increased again amount of the queries that we are having. And the problem is that right now we have exponentially increase of queries over the time. So more products, more items we have, it really increases amount of orders. And to be honest, I have already seen the products that for adding something to the cart, which was a really complicated product, we had to execute thousands of queries, or at least few hundred. And most of these queries were really hidden. It wasn't even visible in the response that you received, just because we never thought about how to query for this data. And every time we ask for some additional data, we make another query, which can really hit your performance hard. So that can really escalate it quickly, and that's what I would like to address in the first section. So now let's see what are the quick fixes for that. Solution 1 is to add extra lazy, or actually lazy and extra lazy will not reduce our amount of queries, but if you start adding eager, that should reduce amount of the data that you are loading. So actually doctrine will take care of you to writing how to or joining additional data, and that can actually reduce amount of data, but it also with great power comes great responsibility, so it's not a silver bullet. We should not eager loading all the data, because more data you load, more data you need to hydrate, the objects are bigger, and there's also a consumption of the CPU that we need to balance between two ports. And with the serialization group, I was even able to go down to 4, in our case, from 11 to 4. And the additional advantage of it is that it becomes linear again, which is the biggest gain in this approach. And the solution too that I would like all of you to know is to just write custom queries. If we would put just a join directly on the query that we will be executing, we're also reducing amount of queries that will be executed. Plus, we have a control what will be joined there. So this is how, for example, translation and Sylius are also handled. We are joining particular translation by default. And this way, we can reduce again query to the linear problem. So we can really reduce amount of queries that are executed on the product. But of course, remember that still it can rise your response. It can rise your response. So we need to also leverage both sides. Is the single query on the product the silver bullet for your ultimate solution? Of course not, because as I said, if you will add too much data, your CPU will consume time to hydrate all of it, which is also quite costly. So to some extent, it's also insane that, especially for the reads, we are making plenty of queries to read and hydrate data to models, just to again hydrate it again to strings and then return it back to the customer, which altogether the process is translating strings to strings that are returned to the customer in many cases, just because this is how we are used to work with Doctrine, and plenty of this complexity is hidden for us. So actually taking a look directly into it, making the less queries, but also reducing the amount of data can save plenty of performance issues for us. Another problem that I wanted to add is concurrency from different users. This is a problem, for example, when many users are trying to make an order, and we need to actually sequentially increase order numbers. So by default, in Sylius, order numbers are sequential. You can be sure that there will be order by the order. But as I heard from one of you, thank you, Victor, because of that, in some cases, you can, for example, make only 2 orders per second, just because we want to secure that the sequential of order numbers is correct. It all, of course, depends on your structure, but by default, for sure, our sequential solution is not the most performant one. So what are the cases for sequential order numbering? First of all, the question is, do you really need to have it sequential, or actually do you can actually have some blank spots? One of the solutions that we used over the years or on some projects is to just use order ID, which will be auto-incremented anyway, and put it and then some left padded. But that means that some card will increase number of order numbers and they will not be presented at the end. So not for everyone it can work. The second, as also order number, is mostly needed for invoicing purposes. So at the end, you would like to have orders numbered from 1 without any blanks. Maybe you can also defer it. At the end, the customer can work with the order with just a token, and then you can actually generate it in 30 seconds later and just skip sequential number generation at this particular moment of time, defer it later, which is one of the main approaches. If you need more performance and you need something that can actually be blocked, just defer it and allow it to work on background. Another problem is locking mechanism of the product variant. That's something that can really mess up your product inventory, or actually can block many people to buying at the same time. And in this case, the problem is, again, that many people try to buy resource that is reserved or have a really small quantity. So we, again, to some extent, we truly need to put everyone in a queue to ensure that the last person either buys it or not. So we need to reduce or to make them in the queue. One of the approaches that is not implemented in the Sylius, but perhaps we should address it, is to have an inspiration from the real life. If you would like to sell more tickets and ensure that the products are still sold to up to single ticket, you can put more counters that will be selling tickets. So with proper load balancer on the product level, we could actually serve from different inventory stocks, and these inventory stocks could be versions. So you can be sure that each of the inventory stock takes its own time and its own queue to support products, but to make it faster, you can just serve several from several warehouses. And then from several warehouses, each of them will have poor performance, but horizontal scaling may save your performance. Another problem is that what is locked, and in this case of the Sylius, it's a product variant, and it's another thing that we probably is a legacy that we all need to live with at this moment, because, for example, it also breaks clients' checkout if someone is changing up the name of the product or description of the product. It still bumps the version, which means that even the administrator can influence the performance of the shop or actually screw some orders. Therefore, the problem that we have in Sylius, and we need to address it in the near future, is that we should reduce to the bare minimum transactional scope of the problems that can influence your performance, which in this case is inventory handling. This is something that we need to address inside of the core at the end, but this is also a problem that I wanted to also discuss here. So just to finish the presentation and some of the problems with the performance is a concurrency from the same user, and this is usually connected to the order processing. If you ever try to process one order and flush several times and flash in the middle, you can see also huge increase in queries, because every time we are processing orders, we are removing all the adjustments, creating them from the scratch. And that actually means that if you just process order in the middle of your if you're processing of the request several times, it added all the queries that remove adjustments and bring them again, because Doctrine will not know that in the collection the data is the same. It will always delete them and insert them again, which is one of the problems. And especially if many of the order processes are going at the same time, which can happen, for example, if you recalculate your query for each time the GET response goes to the store, which was one of the problems with the Shop API plugin, for example, then it can really mess up your product, because at the concurrency problem, adjustments are left because Doctrine actually fails to calculate diff, and you end up with the problematic you end up with the order that has messed up values. So that's how the Doctrine collection works. It always making a new request for inserting new adjustments and removing the old ones. You need to be aware of that and reduce to the bare minimum amount of the processes or calling order process during your processing of the request, which can be translated that you should always process your order only once if you're actually consuming one request message. Now, let's move to the tests.
I know what is the problem of making presentation together, because Łukasz likes to talk much. I like to talk a lot as well. I can share with you the curiosity that when we were finishing this presentation 2 weeks ago, obviously, we were finishing in 2 weeks ago, and we realized that we have like 50-something slides. And I said, oh, it's okay, probably it's okay to do it in this time frame. And Łukasz said, no, it's too few slides. And he just almost doubled our slides with this performance section. And I know what is the reason. Łukasz likes to talk a lot, but he's, as you maybe already realize, he's talking really quick, I would say. The usual thing is with Łukasz that he's doing the presentation with 150 slides, and he's doing it in 20 minutes.
And that's why we are actually entertaining you with this story instead of moving forward with our
obviously,
speech.
because we have plenty of time, and you have nothing to do more than to sit on in this room. So we have totally different styles of presentation. Moving to the testing. Who tests? Okay. At least a little bit. Yeah. As you maybe know, in Sylius, we generally really like testing. And from the very beginning, we have been creating Sylius with this behavior-driven development methodology in mind. And we have been for years using Behat and PHP spec. So the tools that are let's say they are created to make tests that would be useful within the BDD methodology. So the second question is, who likes PHP spec? I do. I really do. I know at least 2 people from the core team that really don't like PHP spec. Both of them are sitting here. Yeah, but and maybe the other question, who likes Behat? Because I like Behat really much. Some of the people likes Behat. Okay, I suppose that most of the people that are using Behat will like it. But there is a problem with these tools. There are multiple problems with these tools, but there is one problem that I would like to emphasize. Is that the learning curve, if we think about the threshold that you need to learn at the very beginning when you start working with Sylius, this is really high. And it can be overwhelming at the beginning if you would like to start to contribute to Sylius, because obviously it's an open source project, you would like to contribute to that. And but if you see all of these scenarios, Behat scenarios and PHP spec files that you don't understand at the very first sight, especially as you know that there is a PHP unit that everyone is using, and we are not using it too much in Sylius, which is not 100% correct, but I will go to that. Yeah, so we see this problem. We, like as core team members, we see this problem in Sylius that a lot of people would like to contribute and to use Sylius, would like to use Sylius test suite, but in the same moment they don't feel that they can be sure that they're doing a good thing. Some of the people obviously don't like these tools, but at the end, this is a really big problem. And obviously, this is not like this that we are not using PHP unit, because if you take a look at the Sylius code base, you can see that we have plenty of contract tests or functional tests that are actually using PHP unit, but they are not so visible as Behat scenarios and PHP spec files, because maybe we are not talking too much about that. One of the things that we would like to change with this presentation, would like to actually talk a little bit more about usage of PHP unit in Sylius, because we really believe that this test-driven methodologies as the way. We really believe that this is the way to make a better code, to make generally your application better and the open source project better. But we see that there is a problem when somebody tries to do it and sees a really huge problem at the very beginning of, especially that we have this tendency that when somebody is contributing to Sylius, people are asked, so can you maybe add a scenario for that or the PHP spec for that? And people don't know how to do it and just resigning from contribution. Probably this is we know that this is the problem from our core team side, to make people more eager to do these things, but by actually making it possible for them to use them. And there's really one thing that I would like to share with you. This is really important, that you don't need to do BDD or even TDD when using Sylius. We have seen plenty of projects that were successful and that were not doing the test-driven development or even behavior-driven development or even test-driven development. I will go this way. And obviously, we are encouraging everyone to do that. I remember it was already a few years ago, we had a training session in Bulgaria, and there was a guy who was the CEO of the company. He was not very convinced about the BDD approach, and we shared with him the idea of using the Behat scenarios not as automatic tests, but only as a documentation and the way of translating the business requirements to the technical requirements. And it worked pretty well, even though they were not using it for testing, so they're not doing BDD at all. Another curiosity that I can share it with you, like we have been working with some really successful projects for last months, already 9 months. So question for you, how many Behat scenarios did we have in this project? 1,000. Yeah. This is the typical, the number that you should probably guess about that. There were 0 Behat scenarios in this project, and it was still very successful. It was still reliable. We were sure about the testing suite because a lot of the tests have been done with PHP unit. We have been testing, doing some integration tests or some API tests with the PHP unit without any usage of Behat or PHP spec. Which is, I know that it may sound that this is quite obvious that you can use this tool, but this is not always obvious if you encounter the project that is so emphasizing this attachment to PHP spec and Behat. We would definitely like to change that in the future. Actually, we already started to transitioning a little bit to PHP unit for unit tests in some of the libraries that we have in Sylius, and I think in Sylius Resource Bundle we're already doing it a little bit. For event system, there are also some PHP unit. I'm looking at you, Jakub. Only PHP unit. Yeah, great. So we are using only PHP unit on the event system, and everyone is happy. So we can actually do a proper test-driven development, obviously, but also behavior development with PHP unit. There is no connection between these things. There is no like, you are using BDD, so you need to use the specific tools. These are only tools. And the last thing regarding the testing problem, that was also rise up a lot of the times during our work with Sylius during the last years, is that we are lacking a really good testing documentation because a lot of the people really like to test their applications and they really like to do the Sylius way of testing, but we are actually not sharing too much regarding. We are obviously sharing on the conference and we are when we talk about that with people, but we are not sharing this asynchronously in our documentation, our docs, some kind of the video courses or whatever. This is the thing that needs to be addressed somehow in the future. Obviously not on this presentation, but we will think about it, what we can do about that. I just want to share that we are aware of these problems, and we will like to address them in the future, hopefully near future. I will be talking a little bit too much because we have plenty of time for that, obviously. Okay, Łukasz, come on.
Now let's move to the payments, which is another hot topic that you can have addressing the Sylius. And I don't even would like to touch Payum, which is another problem on its own. But what I would like to actually address is what is the current flow, which is to pay after we complete the checkout. So the typical flow is that you go through the checkout, you complete the payment, therefore it's saved as a customer's order, you have reserved items, it can be found in the order history, but it's still not paid. The problem is that at this stage, you can be moved to other site, like, you are moving to the third-party website that you can pay for it. Actually, your payment fails, you move back to the Sylius, and the order is gone. Just by default, if you are not logged, you are not looking at your previous order, the order is in the order history, which can be understood as order disappeared for us. So the typical problem is to at least recreate the order and fail the previous one. Or actually, what is becoming more and more common is to have, as a typical request, payment before completion, or at least authorization. It's still Sylius fails a little bit in serving this case. So there are several problems that everyone needs to address if you would like to, right now, customize Sylius to these needs, which is, should the items be reserved after the authorization, or should the items be reserved during a payment? Because if they're not reserved and you have actually limited stock, someone can buy out things that some other customer is buying. So you may have a situation when someone already paid for items, then when you move to your website, you cannot serve the items to the customer anymore. And with the default implementation, usually it actually fails the payment. So the request from the payment provider came with the information that, okay, we charge 100 euros, but you can only serve 50 euros because some items are not there. And so blocking of the cart, which is another problem, if you are moving to separate website, and in this case, you can have open second browser, second tab, and then actually mutate your order if you are paying before the completion. So you can mutate your order when on the first cart, you are paying for it right now. And it's another problem that needs to be addressed. Either allow for the second payment if you move back and you have partially paid order, or just block the possibility and actually freeze the cart during the payment, especially in the third party. These are typical concerns that we all need to actually answer if we would like to have payment before completion. So in this fault, we know that there are plenty of the problems, and we are working on better situation for the payments in Sylius. First of all, having a way to migrate away from Payum. For sure, we would like to remove Payum from our dependencies, but we cannot do it simply because of the fact. So how many payment gateways are there with the usage of the Payum? And because of that, we will provide some grace period that will allow you for the next version of our payment system to still use Payum, but also having some other possibility. Also, we would like to have authorization during checkout as a first-class citizen. Therefore, be able to authorize the payment, then complete the checkout, and then capture. And this capture needs to be also flexible for you. So either it will be done when you fulfill the order or just immediately after the completion. There are different use cases, there are different business needs, and we are right now working with the core team. There is a huge work from Francis, from which I'm grateful. So we can also clap for him, please. Let's be honest, he's doing heavy lifting in that matter right now. So we are working right now on making payments much better, not to actually address these problems for you, provide perhaps some feature flags or something that will make integration of the payments easier for the future.
Okay, and the last section that we would like to do before the some QA session, because actually we have a lot of questions, like really a lot, and I can already answer for one of these questions, because in one of the questions we have, I quote, magic, for example, Sylius resources. Yeah, so we know that the Sylius resource bundle is some kind of magic for a lot of the people, especially when you. What you're laughing at?
If I would play more karaoke, I would just sing this.
It's a kind of magic. Okay.
It's that joke.
So yeah, so please don't do that. It's a kind of magic for a lot of the people that are, especially for people that encounter the Sylius for the first time. And there are several problems with this kind of magic. Yeah, so the first problem is that a lot of the people are using Sylius Resource Bundle, are treating Sylius Resource Bundle as some kind of a God solution for everything that you can do in Sylius. So it goes two ways. So some of the people are overusing Sylius Resource Bundle for everything because this is the Sylius way of doing things. And we have been in this place already in the past, that we are actually using Sylius Resource Bundle for everything, even for the things that are not actually CRUD things, but we're doing that. But the other part of the people are thinking about Sylius Resource Bundle like some kind of delimitation. So I make two memes, as you can see, they are wonderful. So some kind of delimitation that whenever I will go to Sylius and I will try to do something on my own, the Sylius Resource Bundle and the Grid Bundle or the Sylius infrastructure will stop me from doing that. And obviously that's not the case. With Sylius Resource Bundle you can obviously use it, but we also have seen a lot of the projects that were not using it at all, besides something that is already done in Sylius, and we're still doing a great thing. They were not. One of the best things that I think you can have in Sylius that is not forcing you to do anything. You can go with our ways of doing some kind of the features, but even if you would like to make some new CRUD implementation of a new entity and you don't want to use Sylius Resource Bundle, you just don't have to do it. And of course, we are aware that Sylius Resource Bundle is, in some parts, it's a mess still. Like, for example, you can take a look at the resource controller, which I copied here. It's definitely not the Sylius standard of quality that we would like it to be. And we are working on that, especially this guy. He's sitting right there. So applause for Loic, please. Yeah, so he has been doing a lot of the work. I'm really proud of that. He has been doing a lot of the work during last months, I would say. It's already when cleaning up the Sylius resource bundle itself and rearranging it in the way that we would like it to see right now. So we already have some new alpha version released. It was released on June, so already a while ago, but you can already try it with the new approach to use to configure Sylius resources. This whole new system will be more based on something that you can know from API Platform 3. So we will have a more focus based on the providers and the processors that will be used within the Sylius resource bundle. As you can, so here you already can in this version configure resources not with the YML file, which was the typical joke when somebody was trying to do some Sylius development. The people were saying that, okay, so we are doing the first day of the training and we are mostly writing YMLs. So does it mean that Sylius developers are YML developers? Obviously not, but it It seemed so. So right now we can use the PHP attributes, which are obviously much more convenient to be and to use for creating resources. We already have this possibility to configure the grids with PHP, which is also cool because we are actually moving Sylius Resource Bundle and Green Bundle to the 21st century, which we really like. And maybe at the finishing this section and slowly finishing this part of the presentation is that there's a question that is Sylius developer experience still great? Łukasz, is it great?
Of course.
Of course, it's great. Yeah, what we wanted to emphasize is that all these problems that we are describing right now, all these problems that we have right now in the application that we'll try to address, at least a few of them, it does not mean that Sylius is not a great project, and I think that you know that because you are here. But we only want to emphasize it because that we are aware of that, and we will do our best to make it better, because obviously no tool is perfect. We are human beings, imperfect creatures, so we are creating imperfect tools and systems. And we would like to make Sylius be as perfect as possible, but probably we'll never reach it, which is also fine. That's my conclusion from this section. Do you have anything to add, Łukasz?
To err is human or something like that. So.
Okay. We have the answers question right now because it was Q, and right now we have answers. So we have plenty of them. Łukasz, you would like to answer some?
Sure.
Okay, I have it here. So yeah. And I just refreshed the page, obviously. Yeah, so we have already, we have only one spam question, which I know from whom is that, Jakub. So I will not be reading that. Order item units, Łukasz. What can you say about order item units and why they are awesome?
Order item units are awesome if you would like to sell items and track every particular thing that you're selling. To some extent, if you would like to save serial numbers of the things that you are selling, just for some inventory purpose or something like that, that can be really useful. But in many cases, it's not that optimal. So it's a known limitation that because of that, if you're buying thousands of items at once, it actually put, again, heavy load on the Sylius. The good story is that it's not trivial, but it's not that complicated to remove them from the structure. So the best thing about order item units is that we should support them by default to skip them and have a quantity as a number, which would increase the performance a lot. But the cost of that is that we cannot trace down directly what are the prices of each item, which is one of the reasons they came there. So if you have, the typical case is when you have $10 discount for 3 items, and these 3 items will not have equal price because of the cent that will move. So you cannot divide 10 by 3. And that's why we had order item units by default. So you can actually say which item was sold for more and which one for less. If you're okay with not having this knowledge and you don't need to trace down to the single item what was sold, or you are like for example you are selling huge amounts, then order item units are performance killers in Sylius and should be changed.
Perished. I would say that I have a really quick fix for that, because we have already consulted at least 2 projects that I remember that were actually removing order item units, and we even have the document that is prepared for them, and we can just make it a little bit more generic and put it into the docs, so everyone will be aware of that, how to actually remove order item units from your application. Because as Łukasz said, it's not trivial, but it's not something that would take you weeks of development. And obviously there are costs of removing them, but there are also huge benefits if you are struggling with the performance problems with that.
The end goal probably would be to have some feature flag or something that actually can change the behavior of the whole system if you prefer one way or another, so we can actually support both cases.
We have 4 minutes, so maybe 2 more questions. I have a long one. Adjusting existing Behat tests in Sylius to our needs, adding a custom step to checkout took a lot of time and figuring out. Turned out not to be that complex, but should be documented better. Yes.
Next one.
Yes, like we really, as you already know, yeah, because we're talking a lot about that, we are fans of test-driven approaches and these behavior-driven development. We think that the BHAT scenarios are making a really good documentation of the project itself. So it's like a living documentation, which is the greatest form of documentation because it's always up to date. But it doesn't mean, and I think that this is a trap that we are following a lot, like it doesn't mean that it's documenting everything, because it's documenting the features, obviously, but this documentation needs its own documentation of how to actually do it properly. Like, as I don't know who asked about that, but as it is said, it's not really that complex to change these things, but this is not obvious how to do that. This is one of the things that we have been talking about, the testing documentation, that will not only need to have some proper documentation for the testing itself, but also how to how to treat the tests that are actually right now in Sylius.
I just wanted to add that your testing code is also your code, which means that it should follow the same, not exactly the same, but it should also be clean, it should also be maintained, because that's one of the things that actually hit all of us because of the BHAT scenarios, that if you are looking for the class that has several hundreds of lines of code in Sylius, that's probably BHAT contexts. That still can be improved a lot. Because of that, it may be harder to exchange them because you have huge classes to replace, or there can be a conflict of namespace, and we already have a solution for that with injection of the particular context. But again, we learn our lesson hard while developing it and also not having enough time to refactor the previous implementation, that it could be improved a lot. But BHAT contexts are also the code that we are delivering to you. Therefore, it's also our responsibility to have it clean and maintainable and easily usable. And this also adds to having a documentation which we are lacking at this moment.
We already did a huge refactoring of this BHAT suite in the past. It was like, I think it was 8 years, long time ago, really long time ago. It was a good thing that we did that because we actually make the BHATs better. Actually, I had a content for the presentation that I have been using for years. I think that I presented it like 15 times or something like this. Really good presentation. Yeah, but actually, yeah, this is something that we definitely need to improve. The last question maybe, sorry, we will not answer all of them, but this way I can just pick up the ones that we want to answer. Sylius with Postgres. Who asked that? Who's the party pooper? Yes, there are some problems with Sylius in progress, but I think like I would really like, because this is not really specific, at least unfinalized BHAT context classes. Okay, we can think about it. Regarding Postgres, it's not very specific, but I can assume that the biggest problem for a long time was that we were not actually using Postgres at all in Sylius. I think that right now we have at least one build with Postgres. Yeah. So invalid question, sorry. Everything is working correct with Sylius.
Over the years, of course, there were problems with that because everyone at Sylius was using MySQL for development and for CA purposes. And apparently, if you're not testing something, it will break. Who'd know that?
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Over the years, like since 2.11, we started having a build with the Postgres first failing, then without migration. And migration is still something that is not supported for the Postgres, but we are moving more and more into the full Postgres support, at least for most of the behaviors. The statistics can still be problematic, so the main page for the admin dashboard, but does it work right now? Admin dashboard with Postgres? Okay. It does. Nice. So Postgres support is finally also bringing us a first-class citizen because we have CI that ensure that, but I know that many of the people struggle with it over the years. So something that we overlook and should take care more care over it over the years, but finally we do.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So everything is working great with Postgres. Okay, we finally reached the 3/4 mark, so we probably should finish. The last thing that we would like to, can we say that? Like I think we can say that. Like, if you would like to work with us in some point of your future, probably nearest future, we would like definitely to hire some developers. Victor, you would like to work with us? We don't have so much money for you. Yeah, actually we are hiring and would like to hire some developers from the beginning of the next year. So if you are interested, like be our guest. And if you are interested in following us on social media, of course I put Twitter, but it's X. But again, this X is stupid. Everyone knows it's Twitter. So if you would like to follow us, we would be grateful, both us and our organization, and of course Sylius. Yeah, and we should finally finish. Thank you very much. This is a
Thank you very
real
much.
thank you.
For any additional questions, we'll be just behind that wall. There's a playing zone which will encourage you to race the model cars or play the chess with us, or there should be a console, or we can answer more of the questions or actually play with the payments, which we'll be also doing there. So please join us there and we can actually leave the stage.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.